So you're in a basement right now that looks kind of like Lane's room from Serial Experiments Lane. And here you are as a hacktivist in a basement, or cyberpunk as you want to call yourself. And here you are trying to take down the corrupt system that has screwed you and countless others over. You're trying to take it down and hack into the mainframe, stealing crucial information, then getting out and linking it to the public safely, or take down the system the hard way and pretty much blow up their computer. And you need a computer that can allow you to do that. What computer would you use? Well, of course, there's plenty of computers that fit this role, from the ThinkPad line to older PowerBooks. However, the computer you really want is the NEC PC-9821. Now, the NEC PC-98 was a series of computers released in Japan around, say, the same time as the IBM PC, and developed simultaneously, kind of like many PC clones that were made before true PC clones were available. Like, we're talking about the ones that ran DOS and had an Intel x86 processor, but were different enough to the point where programs wouldn't run, either because they didn't have the same BIOS or because they were different hardware-wise. This, however, is what happened when one of these computers kept going on and on until maybe the mid-90s. Now, this is a computer that is kind of like a PC in some ways. It's got a Intel 486 SX processor at a blazing 25 megahertz, and it has 6 megabytes of RAM. And this computer is what would have happened if, say, companies kept developing these not quite PC compatible PCs over an extended period of time. And that's basically what the NEC PC-98 is. And here's a fun fact. One of these was released in America as the NEC APC-3, but it didn't last long because when real PC clones came out, these things were dead in the West. Keep in mind, though, I said the West, because what kept the PC-98 going was one crucial feature, and this was the feature that, when PCs became able to do, killed off the PC-98 series. So right here, this is the keyboard for the PC-9801V. Now, this is a keyboard from an older PC-98 computer, but the PC-98 uses proprietary keyboards, and so this will work on a later computer like a PC-9821 Ce2, which is this computer. Now, this keyboard, it looks kind of like a regular earlier keyboard. You got F1 through F10, roll up and roll down, which are like page up and page down, insert delete, home clear, a help key, which if you hold down while the computer's turning on gets you into the BIOS, a stop key, which is stiffer than the other keys, a copy key, I'm not sure what that does, graph, which seems to be the same as alt, some enter key, and exfer, a locking Japanese key, and a locking caps lock key. Now, as you can see, this displays Japanese text, and older PCs could not do this. And the first attempt at making a PC compatible in Japan required ROMs to display Japanese text, but later on, what happened was video adapters improved so they could finally display Japanese text without any special ROMs. For a while, though, the fact that Western computers could not display Japanese text meant that Japanese companies had a pretty good grip and lock on the computer market. There was NEC, which made the PC-9801 along with the 8801 and some computers before that. There was Fujitsu, that made some FM computers, including the FM Towns, and Sharp, which made computers like the X1, I think it was called that, and the X68000. And there were also companies that weren't those three companies that made MSX computers, which was a computing standard made by Microsoft and some other Japanese company, and that's what companies that were outside those three companies made, except for Epson, which made PC-98 clones, and I heard that they were in some legal fights with NEC over that, possibly, if I recall correctly. And then what happened was PCs became able to display Japanese text, and the same thing with the Mac, which used bitmap display instead of displaying text, and this meant that Macs also had a decent market share in Japan, and that's why PowerBooks and stuff were pretty popular there. But anyways, what happened was PCs came to Japan, and just like what happened in the West, they pretty much took out the proprietary computers that were popular in Japan. And while the PC-98 was the last of the three to go, slowly over time, the PC-98 became more and more like a PC did, kind of like what happened with the Mac, until they decided, screw it, let's just discontinue the PC-98 series and let's just make regular good old PCs. And arguably this was, in the end, a good decision for the Japanese computer companies, because Fujitsu in particular has a pretty decent market share in the West, and I don't know too much about NEC or Sharp's PC market share in the West, but I know Fujitsu at least has a decent amount of market share with their laptops. Enough of that though, let's take a look at the computer itself, because you don't want to watch a very abbreviated history of Japanese computers. There are more videos and stories online that go into more detail about this, but let's just get to the computer itself, because that's what you want to see. So this right here is the PC9821 Ce2. Now, this uses different keyboards and mice than a regular PC does. I think it uses mouse bus mice. I'm not too sure about that. Somebody on Discord said it did, but I'm not too sure about exactly what kind of mice it uses, so I'll have to find out later. But the keyboard, on the other hand, I know for a fact it uses its own PC98 keyboard bus, and this is an old, nice mechanical keyboard with linear switches, and it feels nice to type on. It's got a nice sound to it, and it's good for games for the most part, except for this horrible arrow key arrangement. But good thing most games let you use 8, 4, 6, and 2 for movement instead, and Z and X and space for firing, and actions and jumping or whatever. So, here's the headphone jack, here's the volume jack, here's the reset button. Now, this machine looks kind of familiar, because it kind of looks like a Macintosh Performa 630, or PowerMac 6200, which are the same chassis. Except this, on the other hand, is a lot heavier. And this is metal. However, if you pull the sides off here, this is the only plastic on the case. Which is great, because you won't have to worry about plastic bits and pieces falling off. The only other problem is the metal in here can be so sharp that I've heard of people damaging traces on their PC9821 CE's motherboard, taking it apart. And so I'm not going to take this apart. What I am going to show you, though, is under the front panel. There's a floppy drive here, a space for adding a second one here, possibly. I don't know if the cabling supports it. Some rust, probably from the fact that Japan's a coastal country, and this was probably seen in a basement too, but it still works. Here's a compact disk drive. This thing seems to be seized up. I mean, you push the button, you'll hear a slight noise, but it won't eject. So I think the drive is seized up. And here's the compact flash to IDE adapter in the hard drive bay that I shoved in. Now, I learned the hard way, if you put an 8 gig drive in here, the system won't boot. You need a 2 gig drive or smaller. And at that point, you might as well just get a compact flash to IDE adapter. And trust me, that's worth buying for these, because it also means you can write files to a PC much easier this way. Or, I mean, write files from a PC. Or two. Since you can just remove the card and put it in your PC and read files there. So let's take a look at the Mac. I think this seems, yeah, this is a speaker, and I think over here is a speaker too. So this thing has stereo sound in it, which is nice. Now let's take a look at the back real quick, because this is heavy and I don't want to move it too much. So these, as you can see here, are expansion buses, and this is called the C bus. Now as you can see, these are cards that screw in kind of like on the old laser jets. And there's some ports here. There's a keyboard port here, mouse port there, printer port here, analog RGB. There's 25-pin serial female, kind of like on old Suns, and there's the stereo line in and out and mic. Now this uses AC 100 volt power. It will not work on higher. You might be able to use it on 110, 120, but I don't think you want to blow out the power supply in your PC-98. So what I did is, I hooked up this thing from Amazon. It's a step-down adapter that converts 120 volts to 100 volts. Which is pretty nice because it means you can use your PC9821 Ce2 in America. One last thing I might as well mention before I hit the power switch. You will need a video adapter dongle. Now, you can't use ones that a Mac will use. You can't use the same 15-pin adapter with dip switches that Macs use, because that's not the same 15-pin video output. You'll need a special 80D15 NE adapter from Sinawa, and you can only get these in Japan, or from like Amazon Japan. I mean, they will ship it to the US. I ordered this adapter from Amazon Japan, and it came with a nice vaporwave aesthetic packaging. But the problem is, you will need to order this adapter to use video on your PC-98. Because, like I said, a 15-pin adapter with dip switches for Macs does not work on this, despite having the same connectors. So let's turn on the PC9821 Ce2 from NEC. Now that is the beep the system makes when it turns on. And I'm going to turn this on again while holding down the help key to show you the BIOS. So this right here is the BIOS of the machine. You can change settings here, like enabling or disabling ROM basic. You can change other options, which I can't read because Japanese. And on the bottom here you'll see icons displaying for the dip switches that these would correspond to on a regular PC9801 that did not have this BIOS menu, but instead it used dip switches on the front of the machine. And that is what these icons on the bottom correspond to. Like CPU speed for faster games. Of course, this is a PC9821 with a 486SX, so it's not the fastest thing in the world. So I'm going to hit the reset switch. There is no Control-Alt-Delete on this machine. There is, however, a reset manager that lets you do something similar. So this has 6 megs of RAM, and this is a pre-made hard disk image I found called YAHDI, Y-A-H-D-I, or yet another hard disk image. And as you can see, it gives you a file manager along with a list of programs. So let's load up the file manager, and let's look around in the folders. Now, as you can see, this does have some things in common with the regular PC. For example, autoexec.bat is still here. And you can still add in commands you want to run. Rem still cancels them out. And let's hit exit, escape. So as you can see, your favorite DOS commands are still here. However, one interesting quirk about PC98 Windows and DOS is that there is no slash key in the same direction that DOS uses. Instead, you have to use the yen key. So CD yen games. And this is a quirk that appears on Windows too for when you run Japanese programs. And it's why when you're trying to, say, use a Japanese program on Windows, you'll see a yen symbol for folder slashes. So let's change directories into games, like I already just did. And let's go to CD, let's go to dir first. Some of the keys, by the way, are different on this keyboard. For example, you want to go do an underlying key. You can't hit the same one you do on a regular keyboard. You have to hit Shift and then this key instead. So this can throw you off when you're trying to type in stuff and you're used to a regular PC's keyboard. Now here's an interesting thing I like about PC98 series that kind of reminds me of another computer I like, the older HP workstations. As you can tell, there are 10 boxes at the bottom of the monitor, each labeled for different functions. Like this one's labeled Control-Z, and they each correspond to function keys. So if I push F10, for example, which corresponds to this box, it will give me a Control-Z on the screen. And this is interesting, helpful, and it kind of reminds me of the older HP workstations. The other thing I thought I might as well mention about the PC98 series is that this has a Yamaha 2608B sound chip, or OPN-A. Now, this sound chip is basically closer to that used in the Sega Genesis or Neo Geo than the OPL3 used in the older PCs is. So I'm going to type in, I'm going to run the game. And the person who made the image said it requires close to 100 megahertz to run properly. However, this right here says Doom Operating System 1.2J 1.0. This is Doom for the PC98. Same controls, same performance. I had to set this to low and shrink the screen size some, but it's Doom on the 486 in a PC98. And as you can tell, the music sounds a lot different than what you'd expect from Doom. And also, you have to have both hands on your keyboard because there's no control key on this side of the keyboard. And control is all the way on the other side of the keyboard too. But, looky here, it's Doom. And that's what playing Doom one-handed is like. It's hard to do. You know what, I'm just gonna walk past all this. Oh, whatever. I just ran past it. I just ran past it so you could hear this Sega Genesis style music. And that's Doom on the PC-98. Really, can't say much more because it's Doom on the PC-98. Now, there are other games on the PC-98. For example, there's Touhou, but I'm not going to play it because the thing is, the PC-98 is seen as a Touhou machine, and it's got more games than just that. And there's a bunch on this image. This is the Audi image with more games on it. The problem is, of course, not all these games work. And I don't know if they haven't been configured right or if there's resource conflicts. I wouldn't be shocked about that. But there are plenty of games that exist on this system. For example, Puyo Puyo. I mean, everybody's played this game on at least one system. And it's loading. And what do you know? PC-98 decided to respond by just sitting there and doing nothing, which is something that you'll get used to with the PC-98. And I think it might be this image being loaded with so many extensions that it's causing it to act weirdly. Because I know DOS can do that sometimes, at least on the regular good old PCs. And one reboot later, still doing nothing. Nope, nothing. However, when games don't work, there's a plan B on the PC-98. And that is, you make a floppy disk with the game, or you get a floppy emulator. You put the floppy disk in the machine, you push the power switch, you hear that beep, or beep beep, and you wait. You just sit there, and you wait for the PC-98 to read DOS 6.20 off the floppy disk. And this is Tetris for the PC-98. And this is an older game, as you can see by the worse graphics. After all, the PC-9821 is kind of like the Apple II GS or SVGA PCs in the sense that it's backwards compatible with older games. At least these older PC-9821s are. The later ones, probably not so much. This is backwards compatible with older games, yet it's an extended version of the old system, kind of like what the 2GS was. And except it's not crippled like the 2GS was. And of course, you can play Tetris for the PC-98. And as you can see, it's Tetris with FM music. However, there's one problem with this port that irks me, and that is the fact that you can't just slowly drop the Tetris piece. You have to wait slowly for it to lower in place, and then what you have to do is just wait and then move it. That's one thing that irks me about this port. And there are probably better versions of Tetris out there. So, I mean, sure, you could argue that the graphics aren't the best, but what do you expect? This is definitely an older game made for the PC-9821. I mean, 01. Running on a 9821. Alright, time to turn it off now. And the other thing about making floppies for the system I'll point out now is you'll need a USB floppy drive to do it, and maybe a virtual machine of XP. I mean, XP mode works, but you'll need a virtual machine of XP, and you'll need to make 1.2 megabyte floppies on a 1.4 megabyte disk, because this uses a different file system that was designed to make it so you could copy floppies from 1.2 megabyte 5 1/4 to 1.2 3.5 without any problems. That's why they use that weird file system. So let's turn on the PC98, and I'll show you one more game before I turn off the PC98. Now this is a shmup from Compile, who made plenty of shmups on other systems, and it's called a Root Breaker. Name's kind of dumb, but it's a fun shmup. I mean, nothing too spectacular besides the music, but it's a shmup on the PC98. There's actually a bunch of shmups on the PC98, including Touhou ones, which everybody knows about. And I'm not going to bother showing them in this video because everybody's played them. It's like, so this right here is a shmup for the PC98. Looky here. The graphics are alright, but there is some slowdown at times thanks to the sluggish 486SX processor, and this is soldered on. You can't just go buy an accelerator unless it's a very specific accelerator for this computer. I mean, there are people who made accelerators for it, but there are also people who've made accelerators for Macs and whatnot. And this D-pad, these number keys are horrible because of their weird layout. Like, this is why most games use the numpad. Like, words cannot describe how bad it is. I'd rather play this game with a Duke controller, or just use the numpad instead of these arrow keys, because these arrow keys are horrible. Like I'm gonna hit escape and show you. So you see these arrow keys? Yeah, up, down are big and oversized. Left, right are like half the size. No diamond. No none of that. No WASD. Games mostly use these number pad keys anyway. But all in all, this is a PC98, and you might be wondering how much these cost to get. Don't use eBay to get them. Go to somewhere like From Japan and import one of these. I got this computer for like $10 on Yahoo Japan. The keyboard $15. They're not expensive. And here's the best part about it. Okay. Not only are these cheaper to get than say the FM Towns or the X68000, but these are also, they're not too expensive compared to those computers, and the best part is you'll get like a whole obscure computer you've never heard of, which has plenty of software waiting to be found. It's not like, say, an Itanium or Unix workstation where you either have to find software somewhere, and it's not games, it's all business software. And yeah, this on the other hand is a great computer if you're looking for an obscure computer that is interesting for either hobbyists who want something obscure or gamers who think that they've owned every system. This is a great system to get if you're one of those people. And that's all that needs to be said, really. I mean, there's emulators for this system available online. They're not the most accurate things, but they will give you at least some of the PC98 experience. Otherwise, yeah, this is a system worth getting into, especially now, because who knows, prices for these might shoot up someday if more people find out about it. So I'd recommend now would be a good time to get into the system. And that's all that needs to be said, really. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more computer videos.